It looks like I see us recording. We're good to go.
We are good to go, Councilmember Farmer.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody to the February meeting of the Admin and Public Works Committee. I guess we can start with a roll call. I'm not sure who's taking that. Tom, is that you?
It was, but Councilmember Farmer, can you talk again, please? Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me? We were going to start with the roll call, but I'm not sure which of you guys will be doing it.
Sorry, Councilmember Farmer, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty getting the volume set here.
Oh, all right. Well,
just 1 second.
So can you try to speak now?
Perhaps Councilmember Garantano will make it in time and he can kick off the meeting.
Councilmember Farmer, can you?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Better, yeah. Yeah, there we go.
All right. Excellent. All right. Well, if you guys can hear me, I just wanted to welcome everybody again to the February meeting of the Administration and Public Works Committee. And I guess we can start with a roll call.
Councilmember Garantano. Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Nyhan. Here. Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon. Her saw marker is present. Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. I guess we can do the approval of minutes, although most of the people on here look like they weren't at the meeting. So I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion to approve it. Lauren?
You know, I wasn't here, and traditionally I don't vote to approve them. However, there's a video record of this meeting and it's just better to go ahead and go through the process. So I'll go ahead and make the motion.
All right. We've got a motion to approve the minutes. Anybody care to second? Mr. Jaxie seconds. All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone say no? Object? And anybody abstain? All right. Mr. Hopper abstains.
I have a question, Mr. Farmer.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you want to, should we approve the minutes from both meetings? Or do we have minutes, do we approve the minutes from the one that we didn't have a quorum? Because we had two meetings to approve.
In this case, yes, we should, and it was not included on the agenda. So in this case, we'll bring it back in February, but that is very valid.
Okay. So in February, we'll work on, I guess it'd be the December minutes, right?
That's correct, Councilor Farmer.
All righty. So we'll do this December minutes on the next meeting. Okay. Hang on a second. Is it? No, that was last meeting. Okay. Pulling up the wrong agenda. My apologies. Here we go. All right. Up first, we've got, I guess we have public participation. I'm not sure if we've got any.
Yes, we have two.
Okay.
Two. First one, we'll go with Vicky Roblewski.
Oh, we just come up here so they can.
Where would you like her to go? Where do you, sorry, my first.
You could just stand up.
Okay.
Joe, do you, I'm back, I'm in the room again.
Oh,
Joe.
great.
If you want me to take it from here, I'm happy to do that, or if you want to continue, you're welcome to as well.
Nope. Why don't you take over? I got to hop off here shortly to head to parent-teacher conferences.
Good, thank you for coming in for public participation. So you're familiar with the rules, so we give 5 minutes and to be fair for everyone, and just remember to state your name and address or ward number.
Hi, I'm Vicky Roblewski, 17227 Windsor Crest, Ward 1, and President of the Board of Directors for Windsor Crest Subdivision. I just wanted to make a few comments again regarding the alleys. In August 2021, the master plan was updated and passed as an ordinance. On page 15, number 1, under order of decisions, it reads, endorsed all existing private alleys in town center to become public and all futures alleys to be platted as public. In part, that's the main piece. In October 2022, just to kind of as a refresher, the Windsor Crest Board asked for the legal paperwork to transition the alleys to the city. I won't spend time on all the things that have happened and the details regarding the policy on the dedication of private streets to add the alleys, the emails, the conversations, and the petitions submitted, because most of you are already aware of what's transpired so far. And at this point, I know that the city employees are following the policy. That's their role in this process. But the issue really is that city council continues to approve streets for public dedication without regard to that policy, at least from our view. The precedent has already been set. Even while Windsor Crest has been sitting at meetings and looking at the approvals, we've seen Center Avenue and now money being spent on Crestview. We also know that there was some in the past, Evergreen Forest, where money from the city has been spent on those. None of them followed the policy, and only our alleys were actually listed in the master plan to be made public, and the only ones that meet street construction criteria from the pictures and going to look at them. It has now been 15 months since the board of directors has asked for public dedication based on the ordinance that was already passed. We feel it's time for admin public works and our city council members to take this forward again under the policy, which we have now followed the policy for dedication of streets, back to city council to give final approval to dedicate the alleys in Windsor Crest as public, period. We think this is taking so much of everybody's time. We probably shouldn't. We'd like to see some conclusion to this process and appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else that wishes to speak?
We have Richard Wearspa.
Yes, bravo, bravo. Hello.
Just a word or address.
Okay, Ward 1, 17231 Windsor Crest Boulevard. I'm also on the board of Windsor Crest. And I've been watching this process unfold over the years. And Vicky's been doing a tremendous job staying on top of everything and crossing off everything that's been thrown in front of her, jumping over every hurdle. And she succeeded. But nothing is happening. And then we keep on getting roadblocks. Prior to this, so the roadblocks draw the policies. Someone throws out a different policy procedure or whatever to come up. Prior to this, we had land around the pond over there at in our subdivision, and we gave that property over to the city so they could build their park, and you had the walkway that goes nicely back to the park. And I mean, how long did that deal take? A day? I mean, what policy was followed under that? I mean, that was a precedent. And now to go over to the alleys to be taken over in Ward 1, we have to pay all this money, and this is done back in 2021, and now it's 2024. We just like to have this settled without jumping over any more hurdles and as quickly as possible before things get worse over age. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak? Do we have anyone else that is perhaps over Zoom?
No, sir. I don't see any hands raised.
So, yeah, I was gonna ask if maybe, I know that right now, this is not on the agenda because the committee dealt with the policy a while back, but is there something that we can provide for the attendees to know where we stand with the process from the position of the city? Or
We can, I was gonna mention an individual, but we can provide the policy and the current inspection and recommendation we have on file, but that has been provided.
Okay, so you, has that been provided already or not?
Yes, this time, yes.
So, what else were you gonna say? Go ahead.
I was just gonna mention that Jared Falk with Spectrum is currently an attendee. So he can, if we want, we can bring him in to introduce himself, or we could.
Oh, okay, you're talking about the.
Yeah,
next
yeah,
item.
different item, sorry.
Okay, yeah, before we jump to the next item, only because I don't want to take your whole night to wait. You know, I think it would be good if we can either, what is the update that we can share, or does there have to be a follow-up conversation or discussion with the board? Where are we?
In this case, Chair Garitano, it would be just based off from the staff's perspective is we have the policy in place that was approved by the council. So we did conduct an inspection of the alleys, and per the inspection, those items would have to be met in order for us to then consider for the council to consider the acceptance of the private alleys. So in this case, that is kind of where we're at now. The only way I would say to change that would be to then alter the policy to then allow for certain exemptions or certain criteria to meet. That would be the only way to change for the city's policy right now.
Great.
We would be more than happy to meet with the individuals that came here today, this week, for the council meeting next week.
Okay, so maybe that's something that could be worth having as a conversation, just to make sure we are on the same page with where the city is at, what you have, and then kind of figure out where the difference is, just to see where we can get to it. And it's not on the agenda for tonight, so therefore it's not like we can take any action tonight, but at least you have an update. Thank you for coming and presenting your update here. And Thomas shared that again here. Okay, all right, we're gonna move on. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Today. So we still have public participation open. So do you want to, is this gonna be under public participation, or are you
I was
asking
thinking,
under the topic?
yeah, the question, I mean, I think it could be more appropriate under the topic, but I guess during the public participation, we could just have the individual introduce himself to the audience, I mean, not to the audience, to the council.
Sure, yeah, if anyone's watching. So, okay, yeah, that would be fine, because I think, you know, obviously we may get into a couple
Yep.
of some questions. So thank you, Mr. Jared Falk, for joining us here. So this is under public participation. So if you have any kind of remarks that you just want to share, this would be the appropriate time. And then, of course, when we go into the topic, and I'll ask if maybe we can shift the agenda so we could make use of your time. We'll talk about it next. Because if there are members of the committee that have questions for you, you could be available, and then you don't have to sit through the meeting for a while. Does that sound good?
Sounds great, thank you.
All right, so Mr. Jared Falk, go ahead now under public participation. If you do want to introduce yourself, your role, what maybe you wish to discuss tonight, so when we get into the topic, we'll get into that. Thank you.
Sure. So my name is Jared Falk. I'm a Vice President of Government Affairs with Charter Communications. We brand ourselves in the marketplace in the St. Louis region and in Wildwood as Spectrum. And as you know, we're in the process of building out approximately 2,000 homes within the city of Wildwood. And I was invited to come and participate and really just answer any questions this committee had by Mr. Thomas Lee about a potential phase 2. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm really here to at your service and to answer any questions you may have.
Chair Garitano, would we want to maybe close the public participation? We could, and I guess with the committee's approval, we could bring that up.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking that too. So right now, being that we do not have any other members of the public here or on Zoom that wish to discuss, and again, I'll ask one more time, anyone on Zoom before we close it out?
We have a participant, but they are not asking to participate.
Well, yeah, if you're a participant on Zoom and you do have a comment that you wish to speak, this would be the best time to do it. So I believe you have the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you want to do that, now would be the time to speak. No, I don't see that.
I don't see anything.
Who's that?
Larry has his hand up.
Oh, that's mine.
That's the cursor.
Oh, that's yours.
Okay,
Wrong hand, sorry.
all right. Well, then being that we, what's that? Being that we see none, we'll close out public participation. Again, thank you to the folks that were in the room here to participate. So we'll move into the remainder of the agenda, but again, as we talked about, we have a few items, and since we have Mr. Jared Falk, that is with Spectrum, let's see if we can shift the order of the agenda just procedurally so we can cover the topic of the Internet Access Project Phase 2 consideration. And if that would be possible, I'd like to just get a motion in a second that we change the order to make that item next and then resume the regular order of the agenda. Councilmember Clark and Councilmember Nyan, I see, well, I have a couple of hands, so thanks to everyone that has offered. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstain? The motion passes. All right, so we'll move now to Internet Access Project Phase 2 consideration. Thank you. You want to go for it?
Yep, thank you, Chair Garitano. So real quick, I wanted to give a proper update. So with Phase 2, we still have quite a bit of work ahead of us before we can kind of have the metal hit the road. Next week at council, we'll be looking to appropriate additional funding for a potential Phase 2. That being said, just kind of wanted to get Jared Falk's perspective here tonight as we kind of start looking towards that benchmark for. Right now, we currently have 471 addresses that are on our Phase 2 list. We did get a mention from a Birch Forest resident today that had asked to be included, but other than that, there had been no residents since May of 2022 that have requested to be added. We did receive internet speed data from Spectrum, but there were a few discrepancies that I wanted to get checked out. And what we did do is we provided the individuals that were working on Phase 1 right now, are out in the field working on Phase 1 with a list of all of the Wildwood addresses that are in Wildwood to make sure each address is then filtered through who's in Phase 1, who is not on Phase 2. And then other areas that they have seen in their process to potentially add them to the list. So right now, we do not have the firm data that we wanted to have to be able to finalize a Phase 2 list. So in that case, we wanted to invite Spectrum here today to answer questions about the Phase 2 process, for there is going to be, it's going to take some time to negotiate a contract. So the sooner we get them the list is what I've been told, is the sooner we get them a list, the sooner they can start building a proposal based off those addresses specifically, and then build around it and catch any additional addresses through a walk-in. But it is not as perfect as having, the 1-to-1 ratio, the 1-to-1 list for every individual house that might not have reached out to the city. So that, and the department's available for any questions, but I think it would be good to maybe turn it over for questions to Charter to see what might be best next steps.
Okay, well, thank you for providing that overview here. And again, the members of the committee have received the 2 documents that are attached to the agenda online, which is the memorandum and then the Phase 2 consideration list. So I mean that, you know the status of where we are today. This is a good time for us to talk with Mr. Jared Falk from Spectrum here, the work that they're doing, or Charter, that's where it's noted here, Charter Communications. So Mr. Jared Falk, before we open up for some questions for you, do you have any other remarks that you want to just mention before we get started?
No, I think other than just saying it's been a pleasure to work with, the city on this initial project. I remember I was able to call a gentleman in the first map area that was activated and tell him that morning, I wish I could remember the day or his name, that his area was activated. So that's one of the things that gets me out of bed every morning, is the fact that we get to do this. Spring broadband if people don't have it in Wildwood and other parts of the country. So with that, I'm open myself to any questions.
All right, and I guess before we do open up, because I see Councilmember Edens has her hand up, and she may even have some questions that I have. I think, maybe on behalf of the council, I do want to emphasize that we appreciate the work that's taken place thus far to roll out high-speed internet throughout our city. It is an issue that many residents have been coming to the city for help over the years, and I'm talking about not just a few years, many years. And so for them to finally start to see that connection, it's great. But with Phase 2, this is us getting across the finish line, because we do have a segment that it needs to be included in this phase two, which you see here, and that would then get us to the point where we can say successfully, we've completed this project for the city, and we can move on to other more important things for our city. So Councilmember Edens, with your hand up, do you want to go?
Yes, please. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions, and let me lower my hand really quickly. But thank you for being present with us, Mr. Falk. I represent Ward 2. It's the northeastern portion of the city. The areas that I have that are underserved did not get covered in phase one, which I knew was going to happen. I don't entirely blame Charter for that. I do also believe it was at a particular former staff member's instruction to only concentrate in wards 1 and 6. But I am surprised that looking through these lists of residents, how many are not mine that are in wards 1 and 6 that were not covered initially with phase one. So again, not surprised that my own residents are on the list. Very concerned with quality controls that we had in phase one. And I know there was another individual that came to speak to council, but the assurances that we received publicly, certainly not without going into anything closed session, was that no one would be left behind in wards 1 and 6. And obviously that hasn't been the case. So I am concerned with the scope of the project that is necessary in phase 2 in my ward. I don't have an adequate picture other than through self-reporting with the areas that are not covered, which is why it's really important for this list to be accurate. And I don't have faith that without micromanaging the list, that as a company, you will not leave pockets or streets behind. And if you would like some great examples of this, I really encourage you to reach out to Councilmember Clark and ask her about her own personal experience. And this is important because you're in the government relations role. I mean, her neighborhood was covered and they left her street out. So talk about bad mapping. I encourage you to talk to Councilmember Rob Rambo. One of the concerns that I have is that what we have seen is quality of work and project management issues when it comes to your subcontractors. So please follow up with Councilmember Rambo and ask him about the experience of what it was like for installation in his own yard. Because there were some issues. So I guess, can you talk to us about the feedback that you have received and what levels of quality control you have in place with your subcontractors, so that when I have residents that finally get internet and that are grateful for it, they don't have a septic line system that is ran through, or they don't have other issues where the line isn't actually installed in the right of way. Because that's a concern.
Okay, well, when we hear complaints, I've got a good working relationship and we have regular calls with Thomas Lee, and we try and take care of those things. So, you know, we want to be good corporate citizens and lead the neighborhoods that we're working in when we're doing construction and at least as good a condition as they were when we found it. So if there are instances, we've tried to take care of them on a case-by-case basis. But, you know, that's all I can tell you. I'm in the government affairs role. If we have a problem with our construction folks, they are on these calls also, we want to address those.
Okay. Are there, you know, what is your process for getting updated when houses are complete?
When they're complete, we share that information with Thomas, you know, and that'll be part of the process as we finish this thing up, which we are contractually required to do by April 3rd. So we'll provide, as we're releasing and activating addresses, we are providing those to Thomas Lee, and then you all on your side are doing your due diligence to make sure that they are accurate. So
I guess what I mean is what process in terms of, do you check and see, because somebody may not sign up for service, but they may have, you know, had may have had the line go past them and just not chosen to run a drop line for whatever reason. So they're internet capable. Maybe it's going past land that hasn't been built out yet, because we do have a lot of land in Wildwood that could have a home, but it doesn't have a home yet, right? So I guess what I'm asking is, do you have internal mechanisms with your supplier so that how are you verifying that they've actually done what they said they've done? And I'm only asking this because we've already experienced this as an issue in wards 1 and 6. And I believe
Yeah.
that there's been positive changes and we may not be experiencing it now, but when this comes to my ward, I don't want the same thing to happen twice. So how do you know that it's accurate that your subcontractor has said that they ran a line there? And I ask this because Councilmember Clark can attest to homes being missed and to door hangers being placed on homes that didn't have lines ran to them that service was now available. So it's already happened. So how do you know that the feedback you're getting is accurate before you give it to the city?
Well, if we provide information to the city, we are saying that this address is serviceable. And but maybe there's some confusion too. We don't actually run we call it a drop from our network to the house until the services work. Maybe that's part of the confusion. But if we're providing you a list, and we do this every time we seek reimbursement, we say these homes are active. They are capable of receiving.
Right.
Yes, as we're all, there's still some minor construction to do, getting that drop from the tap to the home, but we can do it within 10 days and usually a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I will let the other council members that have experienced that handle that. What the feedback that I have heard is that homes that were not yet capable were told they were, other homes were not, so that there were issues with kind of the notification process, at least before. So just good to be aware of.
That. I'd say we're not perfect. We strive to be perfect every day in everything we do. We don't always reach that, but and that's a great thing about communication. We've got a great line of communication with the city of Wildwood, and I am personally committed to making sure that we get to as close to 100% all the time, providing you what you need.
Yeah, and I'm not expecting everybody's not perfect. Totally agree. Please don't feel like that is my level of what I'm demanding. But I am saying if we're going to pay for internet capable, we have to be good stewards. We have to be good stewards of tax dollars. So I'm not paying for something that isn't accurate. That's all I'm saying. So
exactly. I don't do either. I want to make sure if we're telling you that a particular house, a particular address is available to order our service, that is the case, and we will do that 100% of the time.
But again, please reach out to those two council members.
Clark, right?
Pardon?
Clark and Rambo, correct?
Yes, yep, and also Brost as well as on this call. But they have already had issues, and so again, I would like you at your level to be aware of it and not just the individuals doing project management.
Yep.
Thank you.
I was just going to say with regards to confirming addresses, right now the city's actually only received, we actually just received the 5th invoice, but we're currently finishing up the inspection for the 4th invoice. What we do on top of taking Spectrum's word at it, if you will, we actually do have our code enforcement team. Typically when it comes in as an invoice, we expect restoration to have occurred and also for service to be available for that resident. So in this case, what we do is we get that list and then we actually have our code enforcement team and our street superintendent actually go down the address list where they're at and look for the presence of construction, but also the presence of faults, fiber lines. So that's more on the construction side. They're also noting at any address, is there still a large hole? Is there still a line exposed? Anything like that could be potentially an issue. So this is where it gets to, we're looking to approve that section, but all of this ties into a final approval at the end, which would be the certificate of completion. So at the end of the day, we will go back to these reports that we put together for that construction side to make sure all of it's been completed. That being said as well, we also have our internal team here go through each one of the addresses from the user experience to make sure they can go to today. If they're on that list, we expect them to be able to go to Spectrum's website and sign up for service. There's a fun item on their website that allows you to look it up and see if it usually, and before we had this project occur in those areas, it would say you need to call Spectrum to verify, or please call us for details because we don't know if you're in the area to be serviceable. In this case, we've been able to verify for the first 3 addresses that have been paid on, that each one of those gets you either to this is already associated with a customer account, or it provides you service options immediately, which is a stark contrast to what you would get before. So we've actually been able to test the front end and back end while also corresponding that to, is there a pedestal in the vicinity on their street? Is there, the presence of what should have been a fiber line running through that pedestal? At that point, say, yes, the work was completed on this street and this individual does have service. That only then do we submit payment when all of those addresses have been confirmed.
Thank you for restating that. And I do want to thank staff for this. And I want the public to know that this is something a lot of council members fought for. The previous attitude was that the private sector is perfectly capable of policing itself. And more or less a direct quotation I heard was, well, Charter would want customers, so they wouldn't leave any customers behind. And so it is refreshing that we are actually using code enforcement to make sure that our project is completed and that we are getting what we're paying for. So thank you to staff. It didn't used to be that way, and we fought really hard to make sure that would happen. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up, so Mr. Falk, I'll talk a little bit here. And what I want to speak about is related to phase 2 here. So my interest in the ward that I represent, Ward 8. Ward 8 is considered one of the higher density areas of the city. We are east of 109, so we are not included in phase 1. And for the most part, all of Ward 8, except for about 22 homes, has internet service. So the 22 that I talk about, or around that number, is a small little island of a neighborhood off of Old State Road, which actually the neighborhood borders part of Ellisville that has a neighborhood there with Spectrum service, and is surrounded by other homes as well. So this island of a neighborhood, for some reason, over the years, has just never been included, even after repeated requests. And again, the 20 or so homes, I mean, I've visited these homes and I can stand in their backyard and throw a rock at the house behind that has Spectrum service. And so we have been, these folks should have been included in phase 1 and unfortunately did not make the phase 1 list. So they are anxiously waiting to get internet service. And that drumbeat continues to get louder and louder. So looking at the memorandum that Thomas Lee provided here, my question here, or really what I want to talk about, is how do we get to the point where we cross the finish line and get this phase 2 going here? And it looks like you have this phase 2 list with addresses. And at this point, it's a process maybe of elimination, or if you guys either doing walkouts or reviewing what addresses on this phase 2 list shouldn't be on there. I can tell you the 22 or so homes that I'm speaking about do not have any kind of Spectrum, and the closest thing they have is DSL. I mean, we're talking way below what is considered underserved. So from your opinion here, what do you see are the next key steps here that we can get this going? And when you answer that question, what kind of time frame are we talking about? Like, you seeing this in the next month or two that we can get this done?
Was that question for me or for Thomas?
That's for you, Mr. Falk.
Okay. I couldn't tell you about a time frame. I think the best thing that you all could do was enter into some kind of contract with us to perform a walkout, where you'd give us addresses that you wanted to make sure that we walked out, determine and confirm that we were not providing service at, and do the best we possibly could to determine what the speeds were based on the information we have. And from there, I think we could get a good list of what we think was not included in part 1 or phase 1 that Charter currently does not serve, and based on the rest of the information available, does not have access to whatever speeds you designate. And most people feel that broadband should be defined as not having access to 100/20 megabits per second, but that's really your decision. I think that's probably the next step. If you ask me, I don't know how quickly we could complete a walkout or anything like that. It's a little beyond my area of expertise to talk about timelines, but that's probably the route I would go. It's been exceedingly difficult with the information available to us to determine with 100% certainty, without actually being on the ground, which homes are lacking that speed. So that's been the challenge, and I think the best way to do that is through a walkout.
All right, so from what I'm hearing here, and I'm gonna look at Thomas now, it sounds like this walkout is the next step, and he said there needs to be some agreement to do a walkout.
So in this case, Jared, could you provide what like a approximate cost for a walkout would be? Like it doesn't have
I
to be-
can't. Yeah, I cannot, but I think we could probably talk with guys like David McManus, who probably could. And
So
it may
can we-
depend on how many,
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
you know, this is beyond my level of expertise, but I'd be happy to involve in that conversation. My own thinking was, you know, I think the city should produce, you know, like a list of those addresses and provide those to us that you want us to specifically investigate. And then we also may want to pull out a map of the streets and highlight set areas where you feel that they are either underserved or lacking service, just to make sure we are hitting at minimum those areas. And maybe from there, he can tell you an approximate cost, an approximate timeline to get you the information you need. That's how I would approach the problem.
So as a follow-up, and this is again for Thomas, sounds like we've got to get to the point where we can get ink on paper to do this walkout, because that's what you wrote on your memorandum, and that's what he's saying too. And this opportunity to put addresses on the list is, I think the time has expired. We've offered it for months and months since last year. I think we've got a list now. Now it's a matter of just refining it and let's move forward. And so I would think you can work on that, then either the next meeting would be good to come back with that proposal of what the walkout is, so we can review that, or at least find out, you know, if there's anything else that we need to do.
To clarify, Chair Garritano, would you say that we can go ahead and then utilize the 471 as the basis for the walkout? I know there's more questions here, but is that acceptable?
I mean, I don't see the 471 changing. I mean, we've offered that opportunity over and over and over again. And I think we're at the point where we just have to move forward, so.
And can I ask one question too to Jared? Jared, I just wanted to ask too, so say the city pays in a separate agreement for a walkout, the results of that walkout, would that then be Spectrum proprietary data, even though the city is paying for the labor and the effort, I guess, that would go into completing that walkout?
I'm not an attorney. I'm a Clayland on TV. I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I
that
don't
could be
know the
something.
answer. But I don't know. I think ideally we'd like to share that with you under confidentiality agreement. And I'm not an attorney. I pretend to play one, but I'm not a very good one.
Okay, Councilmember Clark.
To an agreement, in my opinion, we need to come to an agreement on which home should be covered. So I think we should share that information with you and come to a mutual agreement on what should be included and what should not. That's just me talking.
Well, Mr. Falk, I guess I would disagree just a bit with what was said, that we just focus on those 471, because if you do a walkout, there may be others that we haven't identified, and that's
sure.
I think that is the main reason for doing the walkout. Not that I have a lot of confidence in it, because we started with a plan by looking at the walkout that was done initially. And that was supposed to show us all of the and underserved homes in Wildwood. And because we started out this project with just one phase, not two phases. It was just a project. And it was going to be covering the and underserved homes in Wildwood. And the first list of homes that we got was there were missing streets and there were addresses that weren't on the streets. My address wasn't even on the list, and I was at the end of a street that would have been covered. We were told a lot of things, and I realized that was by other people. but I just don't have a lot of confidence in the walkout unless you give me an update on how they're doing it different than they did it the first time. Because the first time, the walkout did not give us a good coverage.
Well, I would say your 471 addresses should be a minimum. If you want us to walk out every street in Wildwood, I think we can certainly do that and make these determinations. You know, I'm not an engineer or somebody that does that, so I can't speak to it specifically. You know, I don't know what else to tell you. My apologies. I'm hoping from the fact that we've done a phase 1 that you all have identified areas that were missed or otherwise do not have access to broadband, and we can close that donut hole in a phase 2. That is my hope.
All right, Councilmember Edens, do you have your hand up for this? Was that from before?
Yeah, I do. And I just wanted a reminder of this, because I'm trying to remember before, and I think the process we went through before was that Charter gave us a list of addresses. And then they said the list is the list, it's not negotiable. And then council voted on it for phase 1, and then the walkout happened later. So I'm just trying to look back and think about if we paid separately for a walkout before, because it essentially feels like we're paying for a bid, but I guess my question is, can you remind me, this walkout would only tell us who has internet and who is a Charter customer, correct? Because someone could still be an AT&T customer and you wouldn't be able to see it, because I think the reason why this really matters is we are still using some portion of this with ARPA funds. And so we need to meet criteria to use that roughly $800,000 where somebody is definitely underserved from that former policy's legal definition. And we're not duplicating service, because I just don't want to end up in a situation where we have to pay grant money back and prove that at least a certain percentage of this contract was definitely underserved and we don't owe the federal money back, because we still have to spend down the rest of that money. And so what reassurances do I have that when you do the walkout, that you're not just telling me these aren't just Charter customers?
So your question is, I guess I'm having, I think to answer one question. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I can rephrase it, but essentially, I just want to make sure that the houses that we are paying to cover, it's not just that you are extending their services because they don't have Charter for these extra homes, that it's that they don't have this service at all that meets that 100 megabit threshold in order for them to be eligible. And will this walkout tell me that?
You know, I don't know that I can answer that question 100%. I think that these people that do this, if they see infrastructure as they're walking down let's say a street that we do not serve, they're able to identify that that is some type of telecommunications infrastructure, whether it be AT&T or Central, whoever. But that's where it gets a little more art and science. We don't know what speeds they're providing to that particular residence, and we would have to rely on publicly reported data for that. And that's where it's only as good as the information provided publicly, unfortunately.
I have to
And
wonder,
that's right.
knocking on a
Go ahead.
door and asking somebody could not be included as part of the process, because.
Well, I think if you ask someone, people generally don't know what speeds they're receiving.
Okay.
I think the large majority of people, and a lot of people don't understand what speeds even mean. So, I mean, I can't imagine that's part of the something we do in a walkout, but you know, anything's negotiable if this is something you want to, I would assume. And again, I've never participated in a walkout, haven't seen one, you know, up close and personal. Unfortunately, I'm just not the person to answer those questions, but that, you know, we certainly, from our perspective, I don't want to be extending to a service to a house where another competitor is providing a great service, because that customer is less likely to take my service. I'm extending and spending capital that it could otherwise go to someone that doesn't have it. We're less likely to pick up that customer.
Yeah, and what I was thinking was, you know, even if they couldn't tell you their speed, they could tell you if they had a provider or not, but. Yeah, we just, and this was before that we've had this interaction with you, but we had so much trouble with the accuracy of that previous walkout list, and so I just.
I wish I knew why, and maybe the next time we meet, we could have someone, Thomas, if you're available, that could speak to that more, because I'd be very interested myself to learn more about this process and how it can be improved.
Yeah, I'm not sure where those address lists were pulled from. But again, like Councilmember Clark said, there were addresses that didn't exist on that list and streets that were missed. And so so for us, it feels like finishing wards 1 and 6, it feels like we're paying for the same thing twice, right? Like this was supposed to be taken care of, and now Ward 2 is trying to get in there in Ward 8. So a little bit of heartburn without understanding what that walkout looks like. So if it comes back with a cost item, I need all these details to make sure that it's accurate.
And maybe, Thomas, this is an area that, you know, in our next conversation with Dave McManus, et cetera, we need to discuss and dig into a little bit more. And I don't know if Dave is the guy that actually could answer all these questions, but if he is, maybe we could appear in person at your next committee meeting next month and give you more of these questions you're wanting. Because I want the information. I know you all certainly want it too, but I want to be as transparent as I can and get you the answers to your questions. So I don't want you to spend funds unnecessarily. And if we do go down this road, I want to make sure that we hit every house. So I do want those, you to feel certain that that's going to happen. And unfortunately, I'm just not the person to answer all those questions, but I'd love to get that person in the room with you.
If you could send your contact information, that would be great. I'll follow up with it.
But I'll send it to you. I'll make a note to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Farmer, you're up next.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have a wider conversation, and I guess, I don't know if it's called a post-mortem if it's not fully done yet, but at least some kind of a mortem about what went on. I mean, I do want to compliment, Thomas, your leadership and your steering of this ship. It, to the best of my ability of describing things, was seemingly not steered at all for quite a period of time. So we are definitely cleaning up messes here. It's unfortunate to have to perhaps go back and pay for something we already paid for. But I also think if we paid for something and we find that those things were missed, then there's also conversations in that. I think it's refreshing to have a representative from Charter, you know, letting us know they want to be good corporate partners. That's a good thing to have. But I think that, you know, we really need to assess this pretty deeply, because there are some substantial issues that we have been trying to correct for a very long time. And, you know, as I said, my compliments to you, Thomas, because you've done a great job of picking up what seemed to be an absolute disaster on this thing. It's crazy to me how poorly this was handled before. So I'm excited to hear what that conversation is going to be, because I'd like to get this fixed for our residents. It's what we promised them, but this has taken way too long. That's all.
Thank you. One more hand up, Councilmember Brost.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I know going back over this time frame, I mean, we could rehash a lot of things. But I mean, all in all, it's moving in the right direction. My one comment is that, and maybe Joe, you said it in a post-mortem type thing, and mine might be a post-mortem in the sense that we're going to have a phase 1 that's going to wrap up. We will reach an agreement on phase 2, but I wonder if there's a little tail on that agreement, because one of the issues that we've had here is that the residents have certainly had a long time. Okay, I'm not going to argue with that, but it's always been dependent upon them to contact us. And I would just like to say, maybe on the phase 2, if there's some kind of a tail that could somehow address the people that we left behind. We know there's going to be more than one. but there shouldn't be that many if we approach phase 2 properly. So my comment and my question would be, is there some way to memorialize in the phase 2 agreement some type of a tale that should a handful of residents come forward, that they somehow fall within, you know, the terms of the agreement? I mean, it's, and I'm not expecting an answer to that or discussion, but I think we need to have something there. We're going to be spending a lot of money. And again, it's a good relationship with both parties. If there's a dozen or 2 dozen people left behind, we need to have some provision to address that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Sure.
See any
And I
hands
would
up,
just
but
say,
no. Yeah.
that's important to you in a contract. You know, where there's a will, there's got to be a way. And, you know, again, I'm not an attorney, but we'd be happy to have that conversation, see if we can work something out should the time come.
Larry, I'm going to just interject. I'll add on to that tail comment here, because one thing I have heard more than once is that, you know, the bulk of the work is the infrastructure, getting it out. So theoretically, if there is a small pocket or a home that is missed, if we've covered the surrounding areas, then, well, the majority of the work's already been built. It's hopefully just getting to that small pocket of a home or a group of homes. But I heard that before, because I said it should make it a lot easier once we get the main key infrastructure already out there. And I say we, really, it's Spectrum Charter, it's not the city of Wildwood. So I would think that still holds true. Because, you know, we're already paying for a lot there. All right, Councilmember Clark.
Then this phase 2, I will be much more involved than it was in phase 1. You know, I'm currently lacking any type of government affairs staff in the St. Louis region because of Paul Bear's passing in September. I hope to be hiring someone. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks. We've got some interviews with my boss on Thursday, but I'll be much more involved in this process moving forward on phase 2. I can promise you that.
Councilmember Clark, did you have something else to add, or?
Oh, you said what I was gonna ask. Yeah, I just have a question for, Mr. Lee. If there is a way, that we could have, and this may be too much to do, but if there was a map that showed all of the, overlay of all of the houses, all of the house numbers somehow, highlighted that, have availability in phase 1, and an overlay that shows all of the 471 houses with a different color overlay, so that we can take a look at it. Because thinking back about when we got when we had or phone calls or different things, people just telling us, oh, well, I'm not included in that. And even in Ward 1 and 6, the donut holes that we talked about that weren't covered, and they talked to us about it, and we passed it on before you were involved. And I just want to make sure that those homes, that those people did tell us, but maybe didn't get passed on to you from former administrator, that we can let you know, because we don't know. I don't know the ones, the 471, if those are included in it or not. So maybe if we had that to look at and we go, oh, wait a minute, these people did tell us, but you didn't know.
So in that case, would you be, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, in that case, would it be 471, would we be running it from the 471 that we have on the list provided tonight, or would that be, so I get the highlighting the phase 1 addresses, but when it comes to the overlay, where would that data come from? I do know that I did go through my predecessor's emails, and also there was a list that was kind of being worked on. It wasn't where I would want it to be, but that being said, I did go through it, but I understand you're wanting to confirm that information.
Sometimes it wasn't in an email, it was just given as, you know, here's some more addresses somebody told me they needed. So if we had so we could take those 471 and see if that does cover all of the ones that were missed, that were in the donut holes that we were told, just so that we can make sure that the ones the residents that told us as council members, I'm not covered, and we passed that on, and maybe it was jotted down in a note somewhere and didn't get passed on to you. I just want to make sure that I haven't let it slip.
So I think we could do something like that. The only thing I would say would be, the difficult part would be if that data was like written down or something, that would be very tough to recover if it was written. But most of the time, if it was an email or something, that has been recorded and recovered. But what we could do is we could have like our year management map where we highlighted properties. We inputted the properties that were included in phase one that would highlight all phase one addresses. And at that point, you'd still see all the parcels that are in the area. Then we could highlight a different color, the phase two addresses we have here. That being said, there were some, that is kind of the best it could probably be, though. If there's any data that I'm not aware of, wouldn't know where to get it.
And I understand that, and that would let us, if we know of someone,
Oh.
give it the information to you. But as in addition to that, we could look at it and maybe give, if there are donut holes that weren't covered, maybe we should go and check those out. Because they're in the middle of all of this area that isn't covered. And, maybe in Ward 2, there's a couple of areas that have come forward, but there's an area in the middle that didn't. Maybe we should check on that.
And if I will add to that, Councilmember Clark, you brought up a good point. I think if we're gonna be doing this very tactfully, where we're gonna go into that kind of level of detail, looking at a map, phase one addresses should be one type of status on a home. Phase two list would be another. The other thing is, and this is primarily going to apply in that kind of border area where you start to go from areas of the city that are covered to the areas that are not. But if Spectrum or Charter can work with you on that, there might be another status that's their current customers already. So they're already getting service. Now, in the perfect world, we'd go to AT&T too, because that would be another type of home. There could be homes that are not in Spectrum's radar right now because AT&T serves them today. Right? And I don't think we're gonna get that, because we're not working with them. But then there's also another status. It may be a home that right now has service available to them, but they don't subscribe either way. Whether it's Spectrum or AT&T, because someone doesn't want it, but down the future, someone else buys that home and moves in, and they're gonna want that service. So if they have it already available to them, we don't have to worry about that one scenario. But I think that's probably gonna be where you start to get that overlap, whether it's in Ward 2 or 109 east or west of it, because I think we're fairly confident west of 109, or at least except for those donut holes, that was pretty much unserved territory out there. So more data, the better, but to Teresa Clark's point, you can pull that into some GIS kind of map where you look at it. Maybe a red dot means phase one, blue dot means phase two. Then we could see who's missing something. Otherwise, we're never gonna get, to a point where we feel confident. So I think right now, we've beaten this one to death there, although I do see Councilman Edens, I just see your hand up now. Is there anything else you want to add to that before we recap? What's the takeaway?
I do, and this is really just a quick story, if you're okay with it, to kind of give Mr. Falk some background on how part of this list got compiled and why we have concerns about it. So this occurred out of a discussion with the former city administrator where I said, hey, you left Ward 2 out. And he said, no, they can just pay for service. And then Ward 2 residents said, hey, no, we can't get a provider. We're on hotspots. It's the same situation. And then I was asked to provide a list of homes that didn't have internet. And I said, I'm extremely uncomfortable with this, of being sort of the grand poobah of who decides who gets internet and who doesn't. And so the only thing I could think of to do was to basically pull out a large campaign map, and I listed every rural street that I had and sent that to the former city administrator, and included the residents that I knew for sure didn't have it, that 100% campaigned. I don't know whether that list was ever forwarded in the entirety, because I didn't have the only thing I have from campaigning is registered voter addresses. I don't have a list of everybody on that street. So it was incumbent on the former city administrator to look up houses that were on that rural street and pass those street addresses along if they should even be included. And so part of that list comes from a council member that should not have been charged with doing that, right? So this is where some of the accuracy concerns come from. I know for sure the residents that have complained, I can suggest the other areas because I know my ward that are unlikely to have it because they are in rural areas, but that doesn't mean they definitely don't. And that doesn't mean I didn't miss a street, because again, I'm only looking at the areas that had frequent voters. So I could have missed a single house and I don't have a clue. So that's why an accurate walkout is really, really important, because there's lots of little houses right on Orville that are one-off that maybe aren't in a subdivision with an HOA that complained. And I do have older residents that have actually said, I'm not paying for high-speed internet because I don't care about streaming. So if we're incumbent on them to self-report, we're not going to know the problem until they sell their house and a new resident comes in and says, hey, why don't I have internet? And so, yeah, we've given residents plenty of time, but that doesn't mean there's not a one-off that hasn't, chosen not to complain because they don't need that service. So that's kind of the background of what you're working with. And I hope that helps explain the situation a little bit better.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Well, I'll kind of recap hopefully what I heard here. Sounds like Mr. Jared Falk, you're going to check to see if you can come with the other person you mentioned that would be more closer to this work. And maybe we can even see in person at the next meeting here, and you'll get some more information. Thomas. Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
Well, when we have our next call, Thomas, do you know?
On
Let me look at
Friday.
my calendar. Is it this Friday?
Yep,
What time?
1:30.
Here we go.
1:30 Central Time.
Oh, man. I wish, I always have a conflict. I'm gonna reach out to Karen who scheduled this and see if it's possible to work on a different time period, because I am always double booked at this time.
That's right. In this case, I can go ahead and I guess you can give, with your permission, Mr. Chair. Okay, yeah, if you can give just Dave a heads up, I mean, we could schedule a separate time as well to connect on that item. But I think the other items, potentially Chair Garitano, would be to work with Spectrum to get information on that walkout, utilizing the 471 as a basis, as a starting point, not being the end all be all. Hopefully to open it up after that too. If there's a street that's not on that list, let's get it. And then the other thing that we can work on internally as staff is hopefully can try to put something together in GIS we'll start with is the phase 1 addresses and try to hook those into the phase 2 that we have planned and see how that overlaps with the parcel.
Yeah, I think at least that will expose if there are any donut holes, and then you can kind of question around them if that continues to be an issue or if it's just isolated one or two. And I think we're gonna have to rely on what's the best data available. Because in the perfect world, we'd have to get everybody that provides service to tell us that. Okay, I think we covered that well. Thank you, Mr. Jared Falk, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again. And if there don't see anything else, then we're gonna resume our regular agenda here. And thanks for the discussion on that.
Yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for the great conversation. Look forward to many others in depth to come. Thank you and good night.
All right, well, thanks again. So we're gonna pick up now back to where we left off, per the motion. So under administration, we do have a for information item, and again, it is just strictly informational, so no decision making by the body. But if anybody has any questions, Thomas Lee has provided an update regarding the truck and the repair that is being proposed. And it is within his spending limit, so therefore no approval is needed, but I think was more of just wanted to let everybody know that they have to repair the truck so that it can continue to serve. Anything else you want to?
Nothing on that, just that Sunny Auto Repair has done a lot of the work on some of our cars, so in this case, they're a trustworthy source, they've done a good job in the past, and we need this truck in the fleet, it's part of our Public Works Department, so very important to get it back up and running, and yeah, thank you, and I can answer any questions if you need to.
Councilmember Clark.
So, this was a very low mileage for this to happen. What is the root cause of the need for this engine replaced?
In this case, what they found, and this is what the auto body shop reported, was that our employee, and we do, just to kind of rewind it here, we do take our cars in for routine maintenance, especially oil changes, things along those lines, but our employee was driving on the road actually in work, working at the time, and there was I believe it was the check engine light that came on, and it was like a warm engine light that typically scares a driver and you don't want to drive on it. He immediately got out, was picked up, and then had a tow truck take it to an auto body shop. At that point, they were looking to, I think it was replace a smaller item, was a little bit more insignificant, but what they did when they were checking the oil, they found metal pieces in the oil pan, which indicated that something was scraping up against, I'm not a mechanic, but that is a clear indication, at least from my experience with cars, that engine has something severely wrong with it and it has to be replaced. So at this time, it was more so finding the metal in the oil pan that was kind of the conclusion that would lead to us thinking we need to replace the engine. But it's not great that it was at low mileage.
But that's just a symptom. I was wondering what happened to the truck. What was our maintenance schedule on this truck? What happened to it? What was it? Was it the rod bearings? Finding some metal in the oil pan is not that unusual. But if it was caused by like the rod bearings or the main bearings or the gear, I don't know what the metal was, what happened to that, so that we can track it back and see if it's something we're not maintaining. Because that's low mileage, that shouldn't have happened. I don't know, was there a recall on that truck that we missed or something like that? Because that just seems very strange to me that we had to replace an engine.
No, I do agree, and I can go back to the mechanic and ask for some further information. I personally am not an expert in mechanic. I'm not a mechanic, but they had reported that. It's my understanding after doing some research was that if you got the oil in the pan, typically you're not gonna be able to fix that engine. That's where I was coming from with it, but I can ask them and get a better report of where it might have came from. But I do know that our trucks and all of our vehicles are routinely brought into the auto body shop to do just like you would with a normal car, get the maintenance, get the oil change, things along those lines. Yeah, per the schedule, we do it when the oil's changed. That's when other things, if you gotta do brake pads, it happens, but so I agree. At the low mileage, it doesn't really make sense for how an engine had catastrophic failure. I agree with that.
Yeah, I had similar questions because I thought mileage wise, I had a feeling you were gonna bring up a question, given your background. But, they said that the use of it too, they use that for plowing and things like that, so I don't know if that truck, still surprised, but.
It is used for plowing.
It is used for some heavy duty kind of activities, but yeah. All right, well, thank you for bringing it to the attention here, and good to see that the money to repair it is being spent here in Wildwood at Sunny's Auto Repair, who provided the lowest bid. So good to see that news and support a local business. All right, we're gonna continue then. So now we are gonna go into for action. First item is review of the investment management services and associated fees. So there is a document again attached there, some options provided, and also if you want to share any updates and
Yes, Chair Garitano, I do apologize to have this on the agenda tonight. Tonight, the department, I spoke with the city treasurer and I wanted to give him a chance to review the information as well. He did not get a full chance to review all the proposals and everything. So I want to get him up to speed before committee would take full action on this. And if that would be acceptable, that would be the recommendation of the department tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
Looking over this, and because we've had some issues with commerce in the past, I would move that we postpone this for 60 days until, so that we can do further study and we can really look into this, and so I can understand it better. And I don't know, maybe everybody else understands this well, but I have to have a little more time, and I think that we need to dig into it a little more. I would also suggest, I would move that we do that, and I would suggest that there's a meeting set up with to include Councilmember Brost. And I would love to be in it too, but I don't have to. I would think that Councilmember Brost would bring a lot of expertise into it, as well as Tony. And I have a hard time with his last name, so I'll leave that to you. But having those experts in the meeting would be well worth the time.
All right, so you're making a motion on that?
I am.
Is there a second? Councilmember Nyan, okay, so we've got a motion for that. So that'll be a postponement on that to allow additional time for the new city treasurer to review. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstain? That motion, and I'll abstain, just for the record there. All right, that motion passes. Okay, moving on, we're gonna go into public works. So we've got several for information items. So we're gonna I'm gonna assume Rick and Thomas, you're gonna take some of these here, but we'll keep these as quick updates, but just updates for everybody to be aware of where we stand with these items. So first is the deer management update.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. So quick update tonight. We're still right in the middle of things, but as of yesterday, so they're out there tonight conducting operations, but very happy to announce at this point, as of February 5th, 2024, so it's obviously today, February 6th, but this is last night's numbers. We had 256 cold deer. Those numbers come from White Buffalo operating 19 out of the 22 days since they began culling operations, which started on January 16th. One day they were focusing on getting more bait out. The other day was canceled due to icy conditions. We should, per the contract, have 26 full days of hunting, culling. So in that case, we still have 7 days left on the calendar we expect. So we look like we're on good pace to reach that goal of 300. As a reminder, we can't go over 300. So once they hit that mark, they do have to cease culling operations for the year if they hit that mark. But overall, it does seem like it's been very successful for the first year. That's an average of 13.47 deer per night. The city has not received very many at all. We've received 1 or 2 calls from residents saying, hey, just asking about the program, but we also have already sent out letters and sent out notifications in general, but really they're very discreet and they get the job done and get out. They've done a really, really good job, and it just shows their professionalism in the field, because whenever we don't get a ton of calls, that means they're doing something right, and that's what they promised us. So it seems like they're making good on what they had brought to the table. But right now, just as a reminder to everyone that they are going to be utilizing Community Park in this upcoming week. We have message boards out at the entrances. We will have police officers stationed at the main entrances on the nights where they are culling during the actual culling activities. On top of that, we have additional signage at the actual trail entrance. And then lastly, we did notify the residents immediately adjacent in the neighborhoods to that park, so they were given due notice a couple weeks ago. So in this case, that is the overall plan, and they only are going to use it probably 2 or 3 of the nights that we have remaining. But it's supposed to be kind of an add-on to what they're currently working towards to help lower the vehicular collisions that could potentially occur on Highway 100. Department and the Department of Public Works available for any questions at this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
So that's 256 deer, 256 rounds?
66, I thought, right?
256.
Oh, 56, okay.
Yep, that is
And that
correct.
goes to 300.
That can go up to 300. We have 7 days left of hunting cold.
As long as the weather cooperates, is that right? Or
We would need to average around 6.28, but yes, the weather does have
I
to
think you're
cooperate.
beating that average now, right?
Huh?
Aren't you beating that average with the
Yeah,
nights that
we
they
are
have?
doubling that average. That being said, what I would like to, just to be very realistic here and hopefully bring us down to earth a little bit is that it is a law of diminishing returns because they're rotating on these baiting stations. So the first couple nights, they're gonna have their max numbers, and as they return to the same site, you're going to see a small decrease, but we've made really good pace, and even if we see an average drop, we have a good amount of days left as long as the weather participates to be able to hopefully reach that goal. It should be close.
Right, sounds good. Sure, if Councilmember Rambo was here, he'd probably be very excited. I know he put a lot of time into it. So that's good news, and we should see really good benefit, for people who are driving especially. Heard some stories recently, so that's gonna help. All right, thanks for the update on that. Next is the Old State Road MoDOT Safety Design Build Project Selection. You have any update on that?
Yeah, you can do
Thank you very much. Chair Gaetano, we did get a new bit of information this afternoon. Passed our way from St. Louis County. Joe Colessa did finally respond to our email and our request for more information. So I think as you're aware, MoDOT and the county are moving forward with a safety design build project. West Contracting was awarded that project. The question that we had was whether Old State Road was going to be included in the work that West was going to be completing under that improvement project. It's kind of good news, maybe more not as good news as we would like. The answer is yes, it is included. However, what we were told by the email, we just got this like at 2 o'clock this afternoon, is that what the team had proposed to be done was the installation of centerline rumble strips on the lower portion of Old State, and this would be from St. James down to 109, the lower section that's been in question for off-road crashes. So it include centerline rumble strip, which is similar to what MoDOT just did on Route 109 when they resurfaced, if you're aware of that. And also upgrades to the chevron warning signs on the horizontal curves. So did not include any, from what we have been told, any pavement improvements or any guardrail, which were, I think, the things that we were hoping to see out of the study. So I think from department's perspective, somewhat discouraging at this point. We were talking about it a short while ago and felt that it would be good to follow up with Joe in particular at the county relative to this and get more feedback in terms of what their plans are. In particular in that area, if there's anything else that might be considered, I guess, such as guardrail or pavement treatments.
Councilmember Hopper, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I just feel like we are, I don't know, we've been chasing the county on this forever. I think this seems almost like the final bit of them saying we're not going to really make any headway on Old State. So, just my opinion, I would love to see us kind of regroup on the options we discussed last year of just how do we find the funds from the city to do this and try to make some moderate, at worst moderate, hopefully better improvements to Old State. If anybody's kept an eye on it, there has been a lot of wrecks on Old State over the past couple of months. And, I just don't know how much longer we can just kick this can and realistically look at our residents and say, yeah, we're just waiting on the county because we've been waiting on the county for years and it's just not going to happen. So I think we're at the point where we're going to do something or we're just going to tell people that we're not doing anything.
Yeah, and I'll add on that as one of the ward representatives that also covers Old State. We've been waiting to hear this news of whether it was going to be included or not. You know, I would be very interested in understanding their justification for the rumble strips, because when the car is going off the side of the road and it's already on the other side of the double yellow line, I don't know why the rumble strip will do anything. In fact, you know we've dealt with this problem before in some roads where then residents complain about the noise. And it's very evident. We've got photo documented evidence because I'd witnessed just a couple of days ago, big tractor trailer going up Old State Road. We know they can't take those curves staying within their lane. And so, you know, I think we've got to do some more work to hold the county accountable for doing work on this road here to improve safety. I appreciate it is a step forward, but not quite what I would have been hoping for. And I think we'll keep at it, and certainly the citizens on Old State Road will too. Now, to Councilmember Hopper's point, yeah, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and look at what other options we want to consider, which may mean the city doing some kind of investment as well. One question I do have for you, and this might be more of a MoDOT kind of question, is, you know, because we know the county claims it's an arterial road, it's part of the arterial network. They've already responded to us when it comes to trucks. However, are there things that we can do to discourage trucks from using this road as a cut through? And I know GPS specifically will say it's about 2 minutes quicker taking Old State Road. And it's about, you know, maybe a short distance mile wise too, shorter. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. But yeah, actually GPS says Old State, if you go from Old State in 109 to Manchester in 109, GPS says Old State is 4 miles, 6 minutes. If you take the 109 to 100, GPS says it's 5.8 miles, so 1.8 miles more, but a total of 2 more minutes, 8 minutes total. So are there things that we can do that, you know, because I think some folks are going to follow GPS and they're going to assume that's the shortest route, and GPS seems to say it, although with those curves, they're probably driving slower. Can we put some kind of sign on 109 that maybe says there's an alternate route, take 109 to 100 or something like that, you know? Or do we look at options to see what we could do about the speed on Old State Road so that it makes it equal to what the distance is and time for 109 to 100? I think what happens is we get people that take these trucks up there and then they don't realize it, and then the truck's going very slow, you're following behind it, it's going across double lines, and you know, so the county doesn't want to help us. Maybe we can work with ODOT to see if they would be willing to help us put some kind of signage on 109 that says you have a better, safer route than cutting through basically a populated area along Old State. So that's my guess, but I think there are a lot of other things that we might need to look at. So Rick, is that the official, or is that the email, or that you got? Is that
email we received this afternoon?
Or do you think there is any potential they'll change?
Well, it was an email in response to our request for information relative to what was in the design or what is in the design build project. And so that's what he responded. He didn't provide any additional information. It was frankly very succinct and concise. Kind of left me wanting to
And
answer.
that's only one small section. I mean, we've got other parts of Old State that we have issues with that haven't been addressed by this at all. All right, Councilmember Edens, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question regarding a council meeting follow-up. So I just off the top of my head, I can't remember the meeting, but I can tell you it was the one where we invited a county representative up and he came up to the podium. And that's only happened one time. So that would be pretty easy to figure out which one. And what I offered then and asked about as a solution is because, you know, we are being careful of precedent setting because it's not our road. And I understand that the county's in debt, but that doesn't help solutions get, you know, done. So what I asked was, could the county enter into some sort of contract with the city of Wildwood if they're not willing to bond on the issue? You know, one, will they assume debt and bond, you know, temporary debt? And then if they're not willing to do that, two, can they enter into a contract with us where we essentially would pay more upfront, but the county pay us back on a schedule over time for their portion? That way it gets residents in a, you know, a more immediate result. Two, we're not setting a precedent for taking over complete and total maintenance of county roads. And nobody really disagreed. And he said, well, that sounds interesting. And that's a different approach. And we've never really done it. And we could talk more about that. And then it was like, there was no follow-up. So I was just wondering, can we go back and have a meeting with the county about that? And has there been any other thing that we've heard about that? I don't mind, you know, this is could be potentially a good use of some reserve money, right? And if the county was willing to sign an agreement and pay us back over time for the entire portion that we could help them with, then this could kill a lot of birds with one stone. But it's like no additional meeting occurred, but that person publicly indicated that they were interested in talking about that more. Did that fall through the cracks? Like, I mean, I think, I can't remember, Tom, if you were already city administrator or not. You either had just started or you were not yet.
Meeting. I think it was the January of 2023. Did we hear back from them?
I don't remember the particular discussion, to be quite frank.
It would have been in that public comment session that I would have said from the dais.
So in this case, to clarify, and I do remember
I
that,
think that was Joe.
yeah, during that meeting, were they saying that we would enter into an agreement to like make the city would make the initial improvements, and then at that point, the city would cover a lot of the cost of the initial improvements, and then the county would pay the city back over it?
Well, what I suggested was if you guys keep saying, if you're saying it's not a real priority for you and you don't have money to pay for it, what if we helped you find the money, but you eventually paid us back, sort of like a lend-lease program? That's what I was suggesting if they weren't willing to bond for it, because that's the only way that I could see where we could get a safety improvement without assuming control of the road. And it was, well, that's different. We haven't tried that before, but we could look more into that. And then I think it just withered and died on the vine. So in my mind, it's a possibility until told otherwise. So I feel like there could be a potential solution. You know, we're essentially functioning as a loaning bank because they don't have the money to cover a repair in full, but could pay us back over time via a contract.
We can go ahead and reach out to Mr. Kolesik, because we wanted to reach out about kind of getting a better understanding of what this minimal item with the design build project would be. We can have that be a definite agenda item.
Yeah, I mean, residents only care about whether the improvement happens. They don't care about the legal reasons holding us back. And it's not their fault the county is in debt. So what are the things that we can do to kind of fix this? And I don't have a clear understanding of, you know, how much it would cost. And really Ellisville should be involved too, right? It shouldn't just be the city of Wildwood. So it should include city of Wildwood and Ellisville ponying up a portion of the county. And if we can lower the county's expense, does this suddenly move up on the project list for the county? Because they are not just looking at crash data, they're also weighing the costs of fixing something. So if we can lower their costs, will it move up as more bang for their buck and suddenly be a priority to fix. And so that was one of my thoughts too. So if they're matching changes, can we get this done? Like now?
Yeah, find out, right?
Well, I
Yeah.
think if we request a meeting with Joe, we can certainly have some continued discussions and maybe specifically ask about that possibility. I don't have an answer for you, Councilmember.
I do know there is a provisions, and I'd have to double check if this applies to government entity, but there is a provision in the Missouri State Constitution that prohibits a governmental entity from loaning money, so it might have to be something separate than an actual loan, but there are other ways that could potentially be used, so I can look into that as well.
Great.
Yeah, maybe it's not a loan. Maybe it's they enter into a contract with us to provide services at a negotiated rate and they're paying for our services. Maybe that's the phrasing. We're reimbursed for our costs assumed on behalf of the county.
They'll research that and see what is possible. All right, Councilmember Hopper, you want anything else to say there, or is that from the floor?
No, I still had another one. So, and I would say that, no, I love the idea of being able to fund it and get the county to move forward. I just don't want, I think the county has proven time and time again that this is just not a priority for them. And I don't think funds are the big holdup for them on getting it done. I just don't think they want to put any focus and effort on it. But I, of course, love to have the conversation and bring it up. I would just like to be able to hopefully see some other things move forward as far as, just reviewing. I know the last time we looked at it was a year ago, but maybe, kind of getting an idea of some estimated costs in this new time frame of what it's going to be for us to do. Just say, we're just going to do it, because we've just been kicking this can for so long, hoping the county is going to just all of a sudden change their minds, a complete 180, and decide to do something about Old State. I don't think it's a money issue. I mean, it's part of it, but I just don't think that's all of it. And they just don't have it as a priority. They're not going to focus on it. And I think if anything is going to get done, it's either going to be us or we just have to then say to everyone, talk to the county, because we're not going to do anything as a city.
Okay. All right, discuss that one a bit and more to come. Next is the update on the Stricker Road crosswalk improvements. Rick.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really have too much to report on this improvement project. The consultant is Civil Design. They are working on the plans for the project. They're under contract. The survey work has been completed, and the design has commenced. So I know it's underway and it's expected by April 1st to be submitted to us. And that is per the agreement that we have with Civil Design. So it is moving forward, and I expect to have plans prepared by April 1st on that project. At that point, we would have to put the final bid package together and proceed with bidding the improvement project. About the resident.
All right, seeing no hands up then. Thank you for that update. Do you have something else to add, or?
No, not at this time. The left turn lane.
Okay, then we're gonna move on. Rick, status of Manchester and Taylor resurfacing project.
Wanted to put this on the agenda, just to give you an update on the project. It is moving forward and is working night and day to get this project out the door so we can get it under construction. We have gotten the easements acquired, and that took some work negotiating with Schnucks and Deerbergs, because both of those shopping centers are impacted from our work and had to donate easements to the project. So we are moving forward. The easements have been acquired, and we are expecting to get final plans, cost estimate from the consultant, hopefully any day now. They are doing their best to wrap the plans and the bid package up. Once we get that, we'll submit it to MoDOT for their review, or our review initial, and then ultimately MoDOT's review. Once MoDOT has signed off on the bid package and the plans, we will proceed to bid the project. Hopefully, we can get the project bid this spring, possibly as soon as April, if things move forward as we'd like. So bid it this spring. Hopefully, we'll be under construction later this summertime. I would anticipate about a year's worth of work there with that improvement project. There's a fair amount of curb work, sidewalk work that has to be done, concrete work that likely would be done. I would envision that would be done initially this summer and fall. Still to be determined yet exactly when the resurfacing work would be done on the improvement project. I did want to point out that we have, as part of that improvement, we will be replacing and upgrading the traffic signals at Main Street and Taylor. And then the two other signals on Manchester Road at Pierside and Manchester there at the Schnucks supermarket. So both those, all three of those signals are maintained by the city. So we're going to swap out all the hardware, replace all the poles and mast arms with new equipment. And the new equipment, the way we plan to specify it for its provider is that it'll be aesthetically enhanced. So the luminaire, so they'll be part of the signal poles will match our town center style luminaires. And the posts will be, they won't be the plain steel, but they'll be enhanced aesthetically, and then will be painted black. So it should be an upgrade from an aesthetic standpoint over what's there currently. And then we'll have the LED street names signs installed on the three signals, as well as was done previously on Route 100 some time back. So the signals should be improved from an ADA standpoint, as well as functional standpoint from our perspective with new equipment, new hardware across the board. So more to follow there in terms of getting the plans approved. And I think that's really all I was going to tell you. I would point out, you know, we've worked hard and Dan's worked hard to get the easements wrapped up. Dearborn's worked with us directly to donate an easement, a temporary easement to allow the project to move forward. There will be some closures on Taylor Road to allow us to complete some of the pavement and curb work that requires us to close the road to do that work. So there'll be more to follow in that regard, but that work is envisioned to be completed at night. So there'll be some nights where we'll have to close Taylor Road essentially from Main Street down to Manchester Road to allow that surface work to occur. So there'll be more to follow one that is closer in starting. And we'll do our best to get the word out to the public when those closures are planned and will be expected to occur. So with that, if there's any questions, Dan, unless you want to add something to that, we'll be glad to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Rick. I think that was a good update. We're gonna have more obviously once we get more details. So, so you know, the hands up to keep us on track. We've got a couple of for action items that we need to get to. So the first for action item is the proposed aesthetic improvements to MoDOT's 109 resurfacing project.
So Chair Gaetano and committee members, this first item pertains to improvements that MoDOT is planning. In 2025, MoDOT plans to resurface Route 109 from Wabash Creek Road down to Route 100. And as I understand it, they also plan to resurface Route BA, the entirety of Route BA. And that work is again planned for 2025, not this year, but next. After the more recent improvements that occurred this year on 109 to the south, there was a lot of discussion with MoDOT about adding aesthetic enhancement to that improvement project. Ultimately, it did not get done for a variety of reasons. MoDOT is a little ahead of the curve on this next round of improvements. They have reached out to us and asked essentially the city whether we would like to implement aesthetic improvements with their resurfacing project, of course, at city expense. So in my memorandum, if you had a chance to read it, we have put some ideas on paper relative to what could be done and what is feasible. It really would be consistent with what we've done in town center with Route 109. potentially adding to that and continuing with that on these two next resurfacing projects, north of 100 up to Wild Horse and on Route BA. So the things that we've brought for consideration would be enhanced guardrail, potentially having MoDOT specify black coated, powder coated guardrail instead of galvanized steel. Galvanized steel was constructed to the south on 109. The black powder coat finish, I think most people feel it looks nicer, provides a nicer aesthetic finish. So that is one item that we are offering for consideration based on MoDOT's estimates. And I provided a table memorandum to summarize the costs potentially if we were to move forward with this. The guardrail would cost about $62,000 to do, to upgrade it to the black finish. And that would be about $43,500 for the 109 rail and about $18,500 for Route BA, to give you an idea. The second item that is a possible improvement aesthetically. So with this project, MoDOT is going to remove the span wire signals at Shepherd Road and at Clayton Road. Both those span wires are probably on the order of 20+ years old. So they're going to replace them with the steel posts and arms that are more traditional for long-term operations. So as we did at Taylor Road and Route 100 and was done at Manchester and 109, we could request that those steel poles and arms be painted black, as we're going to do on our project. So it would match the signals in place already at 100 in Taylor and at 109 in Manchester, and the signals that we plan to do on our improvement project coming up this year. So the cost to do that, I'm estimating to be about $30,000 or $15,000 per intersection. And then the other option would be to also implement the LED street names on the two signals, as we're going to do on our three. So the illuminated LED street name signs would cost about another $30,000 or about $15,000 per intersection. And then finally, I wanted to point out on our strategic plan, we do have an item to add right turn lanes at two locations on Route 109. And this is not aesthetic, this would be more functional, of course. We have an item on that strategic plan to add a right turn lane at Suzanne Ridge for northbound right turning traffic, and at Garden Valley Drive, again, for northbound right turning traffic. So I've raised the issue with MoDOT whether they would incorporate those improvements into their project, and they are somewhat receptive to doing that. Because it's on the strategic plan, we had plans drawn up for both those turn lane improvements. Unfortunately, the one at Garden Valley requires a utility pole adjustment, and it's about double the expense for, quite frankly, not much improvement over what the current condition is, in my opinion. MoDOT is resistant to adding the Garden Valley turn lane for that reason, because of the potential to delay their project, because of the utility adjustment that's required. But they have stated they are receptive to adding the Suzanne Ridge right turn lane. So if we wanted to do the Suzanne Ridge, they're allowing that potentially. It's a cost of about $50,000. So all told, the features that I have recommended on this memorandum would cost around $200,000 to implement. And if we were to want to move forward, this would have to be incorporated into an agreement with MoDOT and then obviously brought to the city for council approval. So what I'm asking for tonight is, are we on the right track? Do you want us to continue moving forward with these items, or move forward with some of them or none of them, I guess? So with that, I'll turn it over to y'all for any questions.
Councilmember Nye.
I have two questions. One, on the turn lane in Suzanne Ridge, would there be any expense to the HOA, as I believe there was on the turn lane in West Hampton?
Well, there was some, West Hampton Woods, we put the previous turn lane in. There was an escrow that had been collected from the developer, and we were able to take that escrow and apply it towards the project, which reduced the cost, if not paid for the whole turn lane, if my memory is correct. So really the question is, for both those turn lanes, as a city, if we want to move forward, do we want to require the HOAs to contribute funds to those projects or not? And that's kind of a policy question maybe for the city council for you all to address. The cost for the Suzanne Ridge is around $40,000 to $50,000 on the high side. It is comparable to what we spent at West Hampton Woods. But we were able to cover that with an existing subdivision escrow that had been donated or paid for by the developer. And it was available for use, if I recall correctly. So
you said you would maybe ask the HOA? I'm sorry to hear.
So we could ask them to contribute if that's the desire of the council, or we could pay for it strictly out of city funds.
And my other question is on the maintenance of the guardrails. How often do those need to be repainted and about how expensive is that to do? Like is it every 5 years? I mean, I know it depends, but.
It does depend, it's pretty often. I can add a little bit to this piece, but there's an important factor here to consider is that, you know, if we were to take over specifically with the guardrail piece, utilizing like a 410, when drivers strike that guardrail, MoDOT isn't looking to replace it with your typical Core 10. They're going to replace it with galvanized steel. So there would be some type of communication, at least it's today, we replaced it with galvanized, or they just wouldn't replace it at all. That's where the maintenance agreement comes in, where the city would actually have to be the one to go out there and replace it with the Core 10, or have it where the galvanized steel is at least put in place. This would be part of the agreement, but would be put in place, and we'd have to have one of our contractors or pay one of their contractors to go out and paint it. But when it comes to maintenance cost over time, Rick might have more info on that.
I just wondered if, because I think it's been an issue in other ones that, I don't know, if it wears off or whatever. and you have to
Core 10
repaint
stay
it, Even if it hasn't been.
Well, yeah, the Core 10, so there's actually the black powder coat, I would say you get about 7, no more than 10 years, and then you have to be thinking about potentially repainting it or replacing it. Another option that I'd like to bring up with MoDOT, I don't know if they're receptive, is the Core 10 steel. And that's the self-weathering steel that we've used, and we've done it on Oval Road, we did it on Allenton Road, and we have some in Bluffview Park. And it's gone over pretty well. I don't know that we've got complaints about it when we installed it. I think it looks nicer than galvanized. Might be debatable. We'll find it nicer than the black coat finish perhaps, but I think it has a little bit longer durability. I don't know that you have to worry about in 10 years it needs to be repainted. I think it would be much longer life expectancy than the black powder coat finish. So I'd like to ask MoDOT if that's even a possibility. But still, their policy has been if it gets hit, we're gonna have our contractor replace it with galvanized. So city, you can deal with it after that. So that puts us in a position of even having our contractor come out, swap it out, or paint it if it's black. Either is a good option, frankly, but and there are definitely long-term costs involved, no question.
Clark?
Yeah, I like the idea of the Core 10 steel. Because it's high robust steel, and that, you know, the galvanized already, you see at the where the bolts go through and everything is already rusted around those bolts on 109. So I like the idea of the Core 10 that has it rusts on the outside. It doesn't, it said, we call it the self-rusting, but it's not like the whole thing rusts and it's gonna fall apart. But I like that idea, and I would want to know what the difference in the price is with that and the black powder coat, as well as what is the lifespan of each one of those galvanized black powder, the black powder coat and the Core 10. Because as I understand, Core 10 was gonna last us a lot longer than black powder.
Yeah, it should last. If it's not struck or damaged, I think the finish should last indefinitely, but we could get back to you on that. And I think from our experience with our contractors, the costs, I believe they're relatively comparable when you compare the black powder coat finish to the Core 10. But we can certainly do some more work on that. We can have that discussion with MoDOT. We are planning to have a meeting with Ryan Piercy to talk about this very item, potentially other things as well, but we can make the request for them to consider the Core 10 steel and bring that back to you with more information.
Yeah, I would also agree with Councilmember Clark there. The Core 10, look, what you have at Bluffview Park, that's self-rusting. For those reasons there, that it will last longer. And also from a replacement perspective, I think would be better for us. But I do think we need to figure out how we can just start to take an approach where we're consistent, because you've got the black powder coat finish on the 109 section near 100. We have steel now over in on 109, that whole new section south of 100 that was redone by MoDOT. And so kind of be nice if we just kind of were steady and consistent across the board to give the city one common look. So, I think economically, maybe that 410 might be the route to go if the numbers come back right. And we probably need to stick with that, not deviate, so we don't have different sections, different colors. Same thing goes with poles, right? You've got sections with black painted poles. Then you've got some sections where they're not.
Well, I think all of our signals in Wildwood that are MoDOT signals are black finish right now.
What's that?
I think all of our signal poles are black finish.
I think so, yeah.
But,
But I think like West Glen has all black painted poles, but then there are other sections of Wildwood that don't. So what makes, that different than some of the other sections? Any other, Councilmember McCutcheon, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Rick, so along 100, we have the rails, the wooden rails, and then the steel behind it. Is it still behind it? Is that correct?
well, you're right, Councilmember McCutcheon. On Route 100, we actually have a third variety. So in that instance, we have steel backed timber guardrail, and that's another hybrid that MoDOT allowed us to utilize, and we did that, I think, by and large for aesthetic reasons. And it looks pretty nice. It does have to be maintained. We did stain it, and it seems to be working pretty well overall.
So cost wise, would that be less expensive than just going with powder coated, black painted galvanized guardrails?
We could provide you that information, Councilmember. My recollection is the steelback timber is more expensive, but I probably would be best to double check on that. Relative to the Core 10 or even the black, the coated finish rail.
Okay, I think that's very pleasing, and if we're gonna start doing it all over the city, I think we should consider that.
So, in this case, I would just wanted to emphasize that either way, there's gonna be this guardrail, where previously there wasn't. So tonight, really what we're choosing is, as a city, do we want to, MoDOT's gonna put in galvanized. They're not gonna do anything better. So if we want something that's more aesthetic, the city is gonna have to pretty much cover the cost of that guardrail, for perpetuity. So that just raising that piece. So if maybe we could look at other spots in the city too, but it all does rest on MoDOT's willingness to allow us that access and then enter into a maintenance agreement for each individual area.
So Councilmember Clark, did you have something else or?
Yeah, so I guess that just, if we're gonna do it, and the maintenance is less on the coarse and steel, I think that would be a better option. But something, Councilmember McCutcheon mentioned that I hadn't even thought of, that is the powder coated on top of galvanized? She mentioned it galvanized. Is it galvanized or cold rolled steel? Because if it's galvanized, that changes some of my thoughts about its durability.
Can I ask Susan? If it's field painted, they strip all the galvanizing and then they field coat it. If it's powder coated, then I don't know if it's galvanized underneath, but it's powder coated electrically, so it doesn't delaminate or whatever.
It comes out of the shop that
Probably
way.
just cold roll steel.
But in the field, we have painted stuff in the field. We strip it all of galvanizing. They use an acid etch and then they field coat it.
Oh,
With an
so,
epoxy paint.
yeah, so the durability is reduced. So, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we've used an epoxy paint before that's pretty durable, but it's all maintenance. It's all more and more maintenance.
and then I would, yeah, I'd still vote for Cortez steel.
So do we have time for you to come back with different price estimates and still be able to make a decision and go back to MoDOT? Or do you need to meet with MoDOT and give them an answer like ASAP?
I think we're gonna have to basically finalize this over the next 2 to 3 months with MoDOT, kind of is my impression that we got from Ryan Piercy. So I think there might be some time there, yes, to do that. I think tonight I just wanted to hear if there was a hard no or maybe here, and if there's a maybe we want to do it, keep looking into it and finalize the numbers, we could probably do that and bring you more information at a subsequent meeting.
One question is, with the numbers that you came up, how would you propose the funding would come for that? Is that already in your budget for this, or we're gonna have to make adjustments to come up with the money?
We will have to take a look at that. It likely would require us to do an adjustment to the budget. And typically there has been room in the capital improvement program where we can change some of the other projects around and make room for some
This would be a
money.
capital improvement.
Yeah.
All right, it sounds like that, at least we have a little more flexibility, with that budget there. It seems like you have money there.
Yeah, we definitely have more money there than the operating, and it would be a capital improvement expenditure.
All right, well,
But
that's
then
good.
general maintenance would come out of maintenance. If someone hits it.
Yeah.
I mean, out of operating, sorry. That is definitely a
That
win and
might
not
be
a dip.
something that you need to bake into future operating budgets, that what maintenance would go into, and like if you did the black powder. Okay. All right, then we'll come back to this next time, since you're gonna run some numbers on the other options.
We can sharpen our pencils for you.
All right, next we have Turnberry Place Drive and Strecker Road. That's Councilmember Edens in Ward 2. And do you have any information? I know we want to come back to this, but I know you are gonna dig into it. So Councilmember Edens, before we open it up, I thought maybe you could just let us know if it's worth taking it up now, or do we? need to
I
wait?
would just ask for a postponement, and the reason why is the individual reference that we had met with as a city that was sort of serving as the HOA president has resigned and moved, and what I have is a contact of, it's just like a generic, trustees at turnberry.com, essentially for an email account. And it doesn't appear that the other trustees are really checking that frequently. So I haven't been able to make contact with who's left and find out who is basically filling that position. So it is still worth keeping on the agenda. I hate to do, I don't want to waste anybody's time tonight. So if we could kick the can down the road one more month, I'd appreciate it.
All right, well, with that then, just so we make a motion to make it official, you want to make that motion to postpone and to when?
Next meeting, it's as long as the meeting occurs the following month. So next month.
Well, that's fine. If we need to adjust that, we can do that at that time. So Councilmember making the motion, Councilmember Edens making the motion, postpone to the next meeting. Is there a second? Councilmember Nyan coming in. Oh, there we go. We'll give it to Councilmember Jaxie. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Or abstain. All right, that motion passes. So next on the agenda are the contractor bids for the 2024 concrete street replacement. Rick.
Thank you, Chair Gaetano, committee members. I think, as you know, this time of year, we typically put together a bid for concrete street replacement. And we did that in open bids at the end of January for this year's project. We have $1.3 million budgeted for that project this summer primarily. We were pleasantly surprised when we opened bids. We had 8 contractors that submitted bids for the project this year. So very good competition. We got a bid from Next Level Construction as the lowest bidder for the improvement project. Second bidder was M&H Concrete Contractors. So Next Level came in at $1,078,310. It was nicely below our budgeted amount. So we would like to move forward, and the recommendation to the committee tonight is to move forward with a contract with Next Level Construction for our 2024 project. And we would like to award the contract at the bid amount of $1,078,310. However, assuming that they do perform well as we hope, we'd like authorization to spend up to $1,225,000, essentially utilize the full budget amount as we had allocated for this year. So with that, if there are any specific questions from the committee, I will entertain them at this time, but that is the recommendation.
All right, Rick has made a recommendation. Is there anyone that would like to start with a motion, or not? If there's any questions? Motion for Rick's recommendation then? Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I'll move that we take his recommendation.
Okay, is there a second? Councilmember Nye? Oh, all right, Councilmember McCutcheon with the second. All those in favor of the motion to move forward with the department's recommendation for Next Level Construction, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? All right, the motion passes. Next, we have the proposed city contractor agreement for the 2024 asphalt replacement or resurfacing.
Right. Chair Gaetano and committee members, as we do with the concrete street project, we've always did a asphalt resurfacing project annually, and we have in our budget $625,000 for this year's improvement project. We put our bid together in January, opened bids on January 31st for this year's improvement project. We got 2 bids for the project this year, and that has been the case for some time. And the low bid was again from West Contracting Company. The other bidder was Pace Construction. MB West or West Contracting has been our low bid contractor for several years now. They are based in Pacific, so they are nearby, and they've been very competitive in their bidding and done excellent work for us in past years. So this year, we are wanting to move forward with the project with West Contracting as the low bidder. We'd like to finish up resurfacing of Wild Horse Creek Road. Last year, we began that project, but this year we'd like to finish it up from Route 109 to Centaur. We'd also like to overlay Shepherd Road from Strucker Road through, I guess 109 all the way over to St. Albans Road, Church. And then, since if you noticed in the memorandum I provided, the amount bid was actually over our budgeted amount. So we had to kind of scale back the scope of work. But we want to also include in the project this year, make sure that we address some needs on Center Avenue here in Town Center potentially. So those would be the 3 roads that we'd like to address with the project this year. Assuming we can move forward, but the recommendation is to award the project again to MB West Contracting this year, and we will plan not to exceed the budgeted amount this year at $625,000. So with that, I will turn it over for any questions if you have, but we would like to get an approval of the recommendation.
Anyone want to make a motion, or do we have questions?
The question.
All right, Councilmember Nye.
How will the resurfacing from Wild Horse Creek to Centaur with the roundabout, how is that going to coincide? I mean, are we resurfacing what's going to be reconstructed with the roundabout?
Councilmember, that's a good point. So we will have to coordinate. The thought would be what you would typically do is determine where MoDOT's improvements are going to end. And then we'll pick up from that point on. So we will plan not to overlay what they would end up removing at some point thereafter. So we'll have to do a little coordination with MoDOT and find that point on the road and agree to it, but we can do that, and we do those kind of things fairly frequently.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, the 625,000, that is, that would, we would consider a contingency, not go to that 625,000, correct?
Well, in this case, and we've done this in years past, frankly, West Contracting is a good contractor, and given the very defined scope of the work, I'm pretty comfortable working up to that ceiling with the contract. If we came up with a reason that we needed to exceed it, I'd have to bring it back to the city council and get authorization in that manner. But typically with this type of improvement, it's very defined in terms of the scope and the costs. And we've worked so well with West Contracting that I feel pretty comfortable making a recommendation to go up to that amount. I believe we've done that in years past, quite frankly, if that makes sense and answers your question.
Okay, seeing no other hands up, is there anyone that would like to make a motion based on the department's recommendation here? Anybody? Councilmember Nyan, with the hand up for the motion to proceed with the department's recommendation for West Contracting, right?
Correct.
All right, and then Councilman McCutcheon with the second there. All right, so all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. Next, we have the federal funding agreement for Bridge 386 and Bridge 387, Wild Horse Creek Road.
I think Dan is going to handle this next one, if that's okay. Chair Gartano.
Of course, happy to have Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening. Just super quick here. We've got two bridges on Wild Horse Creek Road at one is just near the intersection of Austin Fort and Wild Horse. And then that's Bridge 386, and Bridge 387 is about a quarter of a mile, half a mile north of there. Both of those bridges are in need of replacement. Bridge 387 has been, it's probably the top one on our list. So, and just so you know on those, we have actually started the design for both. Bridge 386 was originally not federally funded, and so we decided to go ahead and ask for federal funding for that project. So that's what this request is here, is to we're asking for a recommendation to approve the programming agreement with MoDOT for that. And then also Bridge 387, we had previously funded with federal funds, but we have to get an easement from Babbler Park, which puts us in a 2-year churn with the federal government. So that's what you may remember. We I guess set aside the previous project and then reapplied. And anyway, so that's what this program agreement is for. There are two separate projects here, just so you know, two separate programming agreements. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right. Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, so our 2 years that is passed and now we're okay?
No, we're just starting that.
We're just starting.
Yeah, and the reason why is we were kind of at the end of the project. Well, not the end, but when you get to that right of way phase is when we realized that we were gonna get into this with the original funding, and that's when we talked with East West Gateway and MoDOT, and they kind of said probably ought to. They kind of recommended to us to set aside the original funding and reapply because of this. So right now we just met with our engineer last week to sort of reignite this project and get that right away piece going. That's the big thing with that. So
I guess I misunderstood when we were doing that I thought we were going to be working to get that easement. It was put aside until we had that easement.
No, we wanted to go ahead and get federal funding restarted because and also that we've got federal funding. I don't remember exactly the year, but we've got some time to get that part of it done before our funds come up. And I will also say MoDOT has been encouraging everyone that if we get into a position where maybe we get through this process quicker than we thought, then they have indicated that they're willing to move money up. So if we get that done quicker, then we might be able to push that into a sooner year for replacement, for construction, so.
You wanna make that motion?
I'll make the motion to move forward.
Okay, so you're gonna let me make sure I got that right. This is a motion by Councilmember Clark to move forward with the department's recommendation. Who wants to second that? Councilmember Edens with the second. All right, so that is the motion on the floor. Any other questions before we move forward? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All abstain? All right, motion passes.
So can
Oh.
I ask one more question about that?
Sure.
When are we looking for that, that's gonna happen, that we're going to apply for funds, and how long will it be before we know?
But we have funds. No, this is the funding. This is to enter into the programming agreement with MoDOT for the funding. So yeah, secure. So we're gonna get we've got 2.036 million for 387 and 769,000 for 386. So that's already locked. That's what these program agreements would do, is lock that funding in.
So we have that locked in, and when are we gonna start?
Well, we'll start, once we get approval of these programming agreements, then we're gonna start, we've already kind of restarted with our engineer conversations with our engineer to get these, we've got preliminary plans for both bridges, I believe. So we're kind of in a good place. It's just that right of way piece in terms of the plans that we gotta get done, so.
The hope is to re-engage with state parks and then the federal government as soon as we can and start that process again, reinitiate that process of the clearance on the parkland. Essentially, we have, I think the funding schedule is 2027. It's associated with the new round of funding. So the improvement project is still a few years away. We have time to work through the clearance with the parks and get that done.
All right, so we're gonna move on then. Last for action item on the agenda, Rick. Let's do the proposed treatment of ash trees.
Thank you, Chair Garitano. I kind of feel like tonight's Groundhog's Day because I bring these to you every year, the street projects and my ash tree treatment project as well. So if you recall, way back in 2020, we started treating our ash trees, and that was a recommendation that came from Davey Resource Group to try to save about 400 of our best quality ash trees and to also minimize the impact of losing all the ash trees that we've removed. So I think over time, we've removed about 1,300 ash trees, and we've saved about around 300 at this point of the original 400 are still viable trees. So the treatment that we've done lasts for 2 years. If you recall, we took the original 400, we split them in half. And the intent was to treat 200 trees a year and alternate those 400 by treating 200 every other year. So we are back to the potential to retreat trees that were last done in 2022. There's about 189 that we did in 2022 that are up for retreatment. So the contractor that has done this work for us has honored their original price that they did way back in 2020. So they have not increased their price at all. So the recommendation to the committee tonight is to move forward to retreat the trees that were last done in 2022, again, this spring into the early summer. The cost would be no more than $24,029 to retreat 189 trees. Arbor Masters is the contractor that's done the work, and that's the contractor we're recommending to move forward again in 2024. So If there are any questions specifically, I'll be glad to do my best to entertain them tonight.
Okay, thank you, Rick, for repeating this again for us. Councilmember Clark?
Is this gonna save the trees? How many times do we have to retreat and how is this gonna save them?
So that is the goal, yes. You have to retreat them every 2 years and it's to prevent continued infestation by the emerald ash borer and to keep the tree viable. So at some point, we may decide it's time to not treat them and just let nature take over and remove those trees. That's gonna be a judgment call as to when that occurs. I will say a lot of these trees are pretty nice trees. So in the neighborhood, so if they are removed, they will have an impact. Again, they were the better ash trees that we had, and that's why we chose to keep them.
Let me rephrase what I was asking. So are from previous treatments of trees similar to this, do they have, what kind of success rate do they have in saving?
It's hard to know exactly. We have, quite frankly, lost some of the treated trees, and it's hard to know the reasons behind that. We expect that some of those trees were probably infected when they were treated, and we just weren't aware of it. And that's why we've lost some, because again, as I mentioned, we have lost a number of trees. We started off with the intent to treat 400. I think the original number that we treated was 394, and we're down to about 300. Of the 189 that are on the schedule this year, I'm gonna have to find a way to get them inspected before we treat them. So I'm anticipating that 189 will actually be lesser. So we won't spend the full $24,029. It'll be a lesser amount than that. So we'll have a better handle when we re-inspect those trees this springtime before we treat them again.
Just let me rephrase that again. In treating ash trees, what is the success rate anticipated from the other studies?
I couldn't quote you, Councilmember research. I suppose we could look into that. Again, it's not 100%. We haven't seen it to be 100% by any stretch, as I quoted you the numbers. Before we treat them, we will re-inspect them. And if they're not viable, we won't retreat them. We'll just have them removed. But it does allow us to continue to keep those better trees that are in place viable going forward. And we still have essentially 700 trees. Let me take that back. We have about 600 trees that have not been replanted. So part of the thought was before we let these be removed, let's replant the other trees first and get them started. Once we get the trees that have been removed, replanted, maybe at least consider not retreating and then removing those trees. I think that was part of the original mindset, was to hold off until we had an opportunity to replant and let those trees be successful and then maybe start not retreating at that point. But at some point, likely that's going to be a decision we make. But I will tell you, replanting a tree is $390 a tree. It's about 3 to 4 times more expensive to plant a new tree than to treat it for any given year.
And I can appreciate that. I just was wondering because if the success rate is, 5%, I don't know what it is. And so over time, I just was wondering how we determine.
Yeah, so I was just looking at some documents while we were talking, and there's a big if here, if it's treated correctly and it's not infected before treatment. So if it's not been impacted before then, studies have shown it's 85 to 95% effective. So at least from the general studies, it does seem like a pretty effective tool to fight off a specific.
It looks like we've got like a 75% at this point.
If it's 90 trees being lost.
All right. Anybody want to make motion to move forward with the department's recommendation to retreat the trees that are infested with the emerald ash borer? Anyone? Councilmember Edens? Anyone, oh, Councilmember Clark with the second? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes. We do have a couple items that will be hopefully coming up soon, and those are listed there. Anything on the miscellaneous? Councilmember Clark.
Just wondering where we are in the one 307 culvert. And if we're gonna keep it like that at one lane over the bridge, or when are we gonna start on that whole project? And is it, you know, or do we keep going out and checking and making sure that it's not getting worse and that the temporary repair is holding up?
As far as the structure, that is, the intent of the department is to keep a close eye on it. So if it were to have any concerns or issues in terms of its condition, we'd be able to recognize it quickly. And Dan and I have talked about the importance of doing that. At the moment, no, we do not have any plans to change the striping over the bridge. We've got it in a single lane configuration for the reasons we've spoken about here. We did have an engineer review the load ratings on all the structures on Wild Horse Creek Road. That was something we did this fall, and they concurred that the signs that we have posted were accurate and did not need to be revised, or restrictions need to be more stringent on that section of road. So we did have that issue reassessed with an engineer this fall. As far as the replacement of the project, I think the thought in my mind would be to try to re-engage with the state parks and the federal government, potentially also piggyback on that effort with Bridge 3-107, because that has the same issues relative to easement acquisition potentially. We've got to work through that issue with Battler State Park and potentially the federal government, because there was, it's just very similar to Bridge 387. So I think we'll have the opportunity at that point to re-engage potentially and follow up with them, and maybe get both bridges addressed at the same time. So that was my thought.
So, okay. And 2027, this is gonna go on until 2027, but that just seems like a long time, because we had talked about it and the need for it to be done. And I think we were talking about something starting by the end of this year and into be constructed next year.
If we can get the easements acquired, I believe we have it on a capital improvement program. I'd have to check what year it's in. So I don't know that it would need to necessarily wait until 2027. However, you do have to really be strategic in how you go about replacing bridges on Wild Horse Creek Road. We can't replace them all at the same time because people can't get out. So we do need to think through that approach. And that was one of the arguments behind doing the work we did on 3-107, was to improve it, keep it open as long as we could. And we did spend a fair amount of money doing that last year, or towards the end of 2022. I forget the exact time. But we'll have to be strategic. We've got bridges on 386, 387 and that location that need to be addressed. They can't be done at the same time because we'll trap people on Wild Horse Creek Road.
And how do we, and another point about that is, if we have the signs posted, but we still have so many heavy trucks going over that are, you know, obviously overweight for the culvert. Is there anything we can do to help prevent them from taking that route?
Well, I believe we have restricted already the road from large trucks, if I'm not mistaken.
It's restricted, but every time I drive down through there, there's.
So we've taken that measure. The signs are posted, I believe. And we've reviewed the load restrictions on every one of those structures with our engineer. So we have done both of those things. I can bring this up with Captain Mundell as well. But I don't see a lot of large trucks down there, quite frankly. We are getting ready to recount the road down there. I can review that to see if we think that the truck usage is increased at all. I guess I can commit to you, we could do that. But I don't know that I see a lot of large trucks down there, quite frankly.
Every time I drive up Horse Creek, I see.
A semi-tractor trailer truck?
Sometimes a tractor trailer and sometimes.
Is that would be the vehicle of concern, it would be the large semi-tractors.
And a concrete trucks. Yeah. Yes, I do see tractor trailer trucks.
Well, we can bring it up with Captain Mundell, as well in terms of that concern.
Maybe one of those cameras to watch it.
Which type of camera?
A camera that watches counts the.
Those are flock cameras and those are, unfortunately, those are permanently installed, so we would have to get a new camera in that case, but I mean, there could probably be a different type of camera, but if we want to do a flock, we'd have to purchase that and then have it installed permanently at that junction. But I know there's probably some other potential camera items. Flock, the one that checks the license plate, does the recognition.
That or I guess I was just thinking of a camera that watched that you can take out leave a part in it or something and watch it on your computer to see how many.
Well, when we counted, we do get that information because our count classifies vehicles and trucks accordingly. Again, that's what I was suggesting is we count the road and I can compare that number to the prior counts to see if the trucks have changed at all or increased or what the number is. So I will tell you, we will add that to our list of to-dos and get an updated count for that area of Bald Horse.
All right, seeing no other hands up, then next meeting Tuesday, March 5th. We need a motion to adjourn by Councilmember Edens. Is that
Yeah,
motion?
real quick, sorry, I had to get up and go to the restroom, but I just wanted to ask, we had a resident that contacted us that was a former firefighter that had questions about how our emergency services, log calls, and is under the impression that there isn't a log created when services are provided. So it sounds like it's maybe more of a Board of Public Safety item to take up, but I am now curious about how calls are recorded when folks go out. I would certainly think that especially if there was repetitive issues, that you'd want to have a track record. So if maybe we could get like an informational memo on that the next meeting, regardless of what public safety could or would do with that. Just to be able to answer residents better. I would love more information on that.
Maybe that's a question that Thomas can find out and provide the answer to Councilmember Edens.
We can reach out to Captain and get a
Find out what the
clarification there.
protocol is for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the fire department as well. My understanding was that this is something, again, according to this resident, that this may be something that Monarch is doing, but Metro is not as well. So just for clarification purposes, maybe they're using a different term, maybe they're calling it a report instead of a log, but I'd like some more information. Thank you so much. And then I'll make a motion to close them.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Edens to adjourn. Is there a second by Councilmember Clark, the second? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Oppose or abstain? All right, that motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much and have a good evening.